Okay, viewers, let's have a look at what needs to be modified in the Islamic ideology of Jihad for it to integrate into the Western world. Now, I mean modify Jihad so Islam can integrate into the Western world. Now, I'm already smuggling in the idea that Islam as a whole is a single political program that needs a software patch, because if you take one aspect of Jihad out of the whole that make up Jihad in its wholeness, all the different aspects, it tends to want to fall towards violence. It tilts towards violence every time. So, Jihad itself has multiple meanings, which we've spoken about before, and the only version that Western liberal democracies and basically everyone who likes not being exploded can't tolerate is the violence and the coercion version. So it's the warfare part of Jihad that cannot integrate into the Western world. So here's the practical answer. Integration doesn't require rewriting the Islamic theology, because that's been there for 1400 years. It requires how people interpret and apply it in public life under rule of law citizenship, if it's not Sharia law. So, what has to change in practice for Jihad to fit Western societies? Number one, strip Jihad of vigilante violence. You have to strip Jihad of vigilante violence. In Western states, political violence, intimidation, and private holy war are crimes. Full stop. Any interpretation that legitimizes violence against civilians, apostates, critics, and random bystanders is incapable and incompatible with Western law and human rights norms. And this lines up with the UN's emphasis on counter-terrorism while protecting human rights and rule of law. Number two, recenter Jihad as personal ethics and self-discipline, the boring kind. A lot of mainstream scholarship describes Jihad broadly as striving, struggle, including inner moral struggle, social betterment, and defense under strict limits. Encyclopedia Britannica summarizes the greater versus the lesser, framing and broader usage. Yes, people argue about specific hadith authenticity, but the ethic called striving meaning is still widely used in modern discourse, and that striving can be an internal personal enrichment of character, or it can be an outward manifestation of takeover and violence in the negative sense, or it can be good works and things like that in the positive sense. But what the worry is and what the theme is here is the violence. Number three, make citizenship loyalty non-negotiable. Integration in the West means you follow the law of the country you live in, participate peacefully, and use democratic processes, speech, voting, courts, rather than religious coercion. A common theme in minority jurisprudence discussions is Muslims living as minorities, engaging civic life while respecting local law. Number four, no coercion, no religious policing. When Western societies run on freedom of religion and freedom from religion, that means no forced conversations, no threats over blasphemy, apostasy, no pressure campaigns that amount to intimidation. Your faith can guide you. It doesn't get to govern everyone else. Your faith can guide you. It doesn't get to govern everyone else. Number 5, keep defence strictly within modern legal standards. If someone uses lesser jihad to mean armed defence, Western integration requires it be understood through, number 1, state monopoly on force, police, military only, international law/laws of armed conflict. Number 3, civilian immunity and strict proportionality. Even classical jurists discuss limits on harming non-combatants, but the key is individuals don't get to freelance war, as we see in the Gaza Strip. What happened there was the authorities that are supposed to make sure violence is in order started a war with Israel, and it went really bad, not only for Hamas but also for the Gazan people, and you can't blame anybody else but Hamas. Western life is multi-faith, mixed, noisy, and full of people doing things that each one of us in some way or other may dislike. Integration means you don't try to win society by dominance. You coexist. Pew's work repeatedly shows most Muslims do not support violent extremism, and public anxiety often overestimates the problem, which makes calm civic pluralism even more necessary. So here's the one-line conclusion, viewers. Jihad integrates into the Western world when it means moral striving and lawful civic engagement, and it stops being used as a permission slip for coercion and violence. So there is a violent theme in the Quran, in the Hadith, or wherever you want to find it, it's there, and that has to be modified. It has to be changed for Islam in its fullest sense to fit in to the Western world without it collapsing into violence. So here's some ways in which the violence can be changed. Where they can limit. Main ways Muslim scholars and communities have historically limited violence in the sources, and how that maps onto modern Western rule of law. So number 1, reclassify the violent material in the Islamic writings as context specific, not universal. A big chunk of the fight-kill passages are tied to specific wars and particular groups breaking treaties, attacking first, or expelling Muslims. The method is read the verse in its historical setting, treat it as case law, not a timeless do this to everyone forever. And this is a standard interpretive move in all scripture positions that would benefit Islam integrating into the Western world. Number 2, use specification and restriction, not abrogation, to narrow the scope. Even where a text sounds broad, jurists often restrict it using other texts. Number 1, who is being fought? Number 2, under what conditions? Number 3, by what authority? And number 4, what are the limits? So fight becomes fight combatants in war when attacked with limits. But if the Islamists are the ones that are attacking without legitimacy, that changes everything. And that brings us to point number 3. Make legitimate authority a hard gate. Classic Sunni jurisprudence and many modern scholars holds that armed action is not a private hobby. It requires a recognized authority, public accountability, and clear objectives and limits. So in a Western state, that translates cleanly to only the state uses force, police, military. Individuals don't get to declare jihad, any more than they get to declare themselves a judge. And this happens a lot. This happens a lot. They take it upon themselves to declare jihad. Number 4, treat non-combatant immunity as non-negotiable. A major limiting tool is the legal ethical rule. Do not target civilians. That's found across classical discussions, even with differences between schools. Modern extremists try to wriggle out of it by redefining civilian, but mainstream scholarship pushes back hard here. Practical Western integration rule. Any teaching that endorses harm to civilians gets treated as incitement to violence, not religion. Number 5, shift jihad emphasis to non-violent forms as the default. There's long-standing discourse on jihad as, number 1, self-discipline, number 2, speaking truth, number 3, charity and reform, and number 4, patient endurance under persecution. The move is not pretend war versus don't exist. It makes armed conflict the exceptional edge case, not the defining brand. Number 6, separate moral theology from criminal law. Some of the ugliest outcomes historically came from treating religious offences as state crimes, like apostasy and blasphemy, etc. To integrate into the West, the line is, you can believe something is sinful. You cannot make it a punishable crime through violence, threats, or parallel courts. Right, and that's what happens. That's the difference between my religion teaches X and I'm going to enforce X on you. Number 7, put it under a modern constitutional frame. In Western democracies, the governing stack is, number 1, constitutional, number 2, criminal law, number 3, human right protections, and number 4, democratic processes. Religious interpretation sits underneath that. People can preach, argue, persuade. They can't coerce. So this is what I'm really seeking to answer. I'm trying to answer how tradition with some militant texts can coexist peacefully in the Western world. The answer is by treating those texts, viewers, like historical wartime instruction with strict limits, and by binding public life to the rule of law. Extremists hate this because it removes their favourite toy, God told me to do violence. They prefer chaos because it makes them feel important. If you want this to be something that you need to look further into, then you can do that in through study and things like that. But this is just an overview of how jihad can integrate into the Western world. So individuals don't get to declare jihad any more than they get to declare themselves a judge. So it's not just a Western law thing. It's also a classical Islamic law thing in the mainstream legal tradition. So here's what the line means in plain terms. And that line is, individuals don't get to declare jihad any more than they get to declare themselves a judge. Why individuals can't just declare jihad? War is a public act, not a private spiritual hobby. Once you unleash violence, you drag whole communities into consequences, and that's what we've seen in Gaza. Classical jurists generally treated armed jihad as something that requires legitimate authority, an imam, ruler, or a state, because otherwise you get number 1, chaos, number 2, rival factions, number 3, blood feuds, and number 4, every hothead claiming God is their co-pilot. That's why the who can declare jihad question historically lands with political authority, not random individuals. So how that maps onto the Western world. Western democracies run on the same functional principle. Number 1, the state has the monopoly on lawful force. Number 2, individuals committing violence are criminals, not holy warriors. So even if someone uses the word jihad, the legal reality is self-discipline, charity, preaching is allowed. Violence, intimidation, recruitment for violence is prosecutable. the punchline. If jihad becomes an individual license to fight, it's not religion anymore. It's just an excuse for crime dressed up in Arabic colours. And so I'm going to close on that note, viewers, and bye for now.